In the governing body extraordinary meeting, no, I can go through this quickly to start. Welcome back, everybody. We're now in the governing body meeting to consider the Tupuna Maunga Authority, the Merrill proposal, and the other fees and charges in the Franklin Local Board targeted rate. In theory, it should be quickly, but you never know. We have procedural items to get through, which I'll get straight away. There are, in terms of councillors, Councillor Fletcher's now online. She wasn't feeling terribly well. We wish her well. I don't think we've got any other defections. If they are, they'll just be very short. So there are no apologies other than Councillor Fletcher's online. Declaration of interest. I don't think there's any new that weren't added this morning. We'll just record this morning's one if that's all right. No public input section. No local board input section at this stage. And there's no known extraordinary items. So I'll get on to the Tupuna Maunga Authority. We had a session on this last week, so I don't think there's a need to present again, but I'll move that we accept this and the Deputy Mayor will second it. Dominic Wilson, who's co-head of governance, is online. Dom, hello, kia ora. And Paul Majuri, the chairperson, it will be available if required. But the comprehensive recommendation is to agree to the Tupuna Maunga Authority Operational Plan 24-25, the summary of the Tupuna Maunga Operational Plan 24-25, and agree to include the approved summary of the operational plan in the long-term plan. Dominic, you can say a few words and introduce us if you wish.
Sir, I've been watching you all working so hard today, and so I'll try and be very succinct. The key point really for this paper is that every year the Tupuna Maunga Authority and the Auckland Council need to agree upon the budget for the Tupuna Maunga Authority. And of course, this year we have the long-term plan 2024-34. Also in every year we have public feedback, and that's been undertaken by both the authority itself, but also by the Auckland Council. And there were 27 pieces of feedback from the public, which are discussed in the report. And there were 9 local boards pieces of feedback also set out in the report in favour. And the next steps should the well, this matters of course for the governing body to decide today, but then if the next step, if it was approved, would be for the Tupuna Maunga Authority itself to consider the plan at its meeting of June coming up. Kia ora, sir. I'll leave it over back to you.
Deputy Mayor Simpson has
a question
of you, Dominic.
Thanks, Dominic. Many Aucklanders value mature trees, whether exotic or native, and can you confirm then that under the Integrated Management Plan, remaining exotic trees will only be removed if they are a pest species or present a health and safety risk?
I think my answer is going to be reasonably complex, but the first part to it is that the authority management team routinely monitor the maunga, and so there will be removal of pest species and species that pose a health and safety risks. The answer to that part is definitely a yes. And also I must admit there are from time to time matters come up with such things as Dutch elm disease, which require intervention. And of course in the last years we've seen storms such that very regularly trees are blowing down on the maunga, and there's a lot of requirement for us to keep an eye on that and manage trees in that relation. In terms of the integrated management plan, my answer to if there's any removals, it's all within in terms of that integrated management plan. And I'm sure you're aware that in 2022 there was an amendment to the plan which focused on the matter of vegetation restoration program, and was very specific for particularly for maunga, and also that amendment done in 2022 was subject to a full public consultation in terms of the Reserves Act and also the governing legislation. So that would be my answer there. Thank you.
You okay with that answer? Councillor Walker has a question.
Just got a further question with respect to vegetation management. Is the budget for vegetation management, and I'm referring to specifically the removal of mature trees, shown separately? And if not, why not?
The direction from the authority is to a program for restoration of the maunga, and that restoration is a program that involves both removals and planting. And so that's why in the operational plan you'll see that there's a figure for the restoration program. And we've been asked by various members in the past, in this past year, about what the breakdown of that figure that's in the ops plan is. It's a $1.1 million figure, and we've advised that the approximate broad breakdown is 1/3 removal, which is around 360,000, and 2/3 planting, which is around 720,000. Kelvin.
And the other question I've got is just around your monitoring of the survival rate of the small plants that are going in. Is that something that you monitor and report on regularly?
That's a really good question. It is. The advisors to the authority identified that there would be a likely survival rate, and that was factored into the maintenance contracts for the contractors who do the planting. And there's a process of checking up. There was, I know in some years we've had some drought some years back now, and that required more planting than was expected, but that has been happening, and it's a continuing program. So we're over 100,000 plants, native plants have been planted on the maunga in the last years.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the reason I ask these questions is residents of both localities around the Maunga and the wider Auckland area share a strong affinity with the trees on the Maunga, irrespective of whether they're native or not. And often those very mature exotics provide habitat for birds and any number of native wildlife. They don't necessarily discriminate between whether something is a native or an exotic. And I'm mindful that if you look back over time, many of the things that we classify as exotics, things like eucalypts, for example, Norfolk pines, and I could rattle off an extensive list, used to inhabit New Zealand. And we've got climate change, and over time, even the mix of what are now native plants will change inevitably. So we need to take sometimes a very long-term perspective around what we have in the landscape. Thank you.
Very much noted.
Councillor Leone.
Mine's more a comment rather than a question. Are we doing comments now, or you still just want to do questions?
Just say.
Yeah, okay. Look, I just want to acknowledge the great mahi that you're doing, Dominic, and I know that we brought this up in the workshop, but just to acknowledge again the awards that the Tupuna Maunga Authority have won recently. That's been outstanding work. So I just really want to mihi to you all for the great work that you do, the fact that we work really well with mana whenua, and that co-governance models here at Auckland Council are still alive and well, which is great. So ngā mihi nui. Kia ora.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Hills.
Kia ora, thank you very much. Just also want to acknowledge the amazing work of the Kaimahi for the Tupuna Maunga Authority. Huge amount of work goes on. The planting is pretty extraordinary, the planting program there, and the upgrades to the tracks and the assets, and also the important World War I and II assets on the Maunga in our North Shore ward as well. They've been upgraded and are looking great. So thank you for that. And also want to thank you for the transparency around things like trees. You know, I have some annoyances around the removal of some mature trees by other parts of council and our CCOs, and I find it very hard to get any information around why or if they could be protected or kept as part of projects. So and that's natives as well. So I'm quite happy with the amount of information you give us. So kia ora, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Dominic. There's no further debate. I'm going to put this motion. All those in favour, please say aye. 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 Contrary? Carried. Thank you very much for that, Dominic. The next item is the Merrill proposal. We've had this recommended from the Budget Committee earlier. Thank you for your consideration. I'll move it. The Deputy Mayor will second this. I've already said my piece. I don't feel the need to repeat myself again, and I'll encourage others to follow our suit, although you all have the right to speak again, of course. There have been a few amendments tabled and circulated to you. I've got one from Councillor Furley and one from Councillor Lee. I believe that's right. They've been circulated so we can ask questions of staff about the amendments and substantive motion all in one go. So if you've got questions, and remember you've asked dozens of them today, so try not to repeat yourself, but we'll ask about the amendments and the substantive in one go. That's a bit quicker. However, if there are any other amendments that get moved during the debate, we'll just have to pause and let councillors ask questions about the new amendment like we did during the Budget Committee. That's because I think it's important we get advice on amendments that affect our budget. Is that okay? So I'll take the first one that was delivered was an amendment from Councillor Foley, which to an extent just is to stop having the wealth fund. I think that sums it up. Is that right? Okay.
Is it possible
Do you have a
to bring it
seconder?
up? Yes. Oh,
Who's seconding that? You
there
are?
might be questions first. Yeah.
We'll record that. Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I'm happy to wait to speak until after people have asked questions of staff, if there are questions about the numbers, or bring it up maybe.
Yeah, okay, I'll take your questions on this about the numbers. We're never quite sure of the numbers, but the numbers definitely increase things. And we've had a fair old flogging about who likes it and who doesn't want it. You also have added in there that you want to borrow some money to do another $30 million to do things which otherwise would have been paid from the windfall of starting this thing, so that it has some, that $30 million is another 1.5%, which isn't added up in the top lot there, I've noticed. So please, we're just asking you right there, where's that $30 million coming from? And surely it has an impact on things.
Yes,
borrow that or take it out of the ratepayers?
under this proposal, that $30 million would be borrowed, and that would explain why in year one the rates increase would need to increase from 6.8 to 6.9, so that every year we would have more rates to cover the interest on that borrowing.
Are there any great questions, or we just put it really? I think we've all got a view on this. You want to put it, to check people out. Councillor Philippa.
Thank you, Chair. Michael, it's not an extra 30 million, is it? It's 10 million, which is added on to the 20 of the mayoral proposal. Am I correct in that or no?
No, because the mayoral proposal has that 20 million funded from the proceeds of the future fund. But in this case, the airport shares are not transferred. There's no, that benefit isn't there. And so therefore, in order to have the fund, you would need to borrow money.
Thank you.
Question, Your Worship, are we just doing councillor Foley's amendment? Yes, we are. Okay.
It becomes too much of a mess. We'll do, Foley's amendment is to dump the thing and borrow $30 million, and Lee's amendment is to fend it off again. So, so it's quite clear. Councillor Foley, that's correct, isn't it? You just really want to be honestly, stop it.
I've got a question. If there aren't any other questions, just a question for staff. What are the dollar differences between those rates rises in my amendment compared to the mayor's rates rises in the substantive proposal? Andrew is still here, I see. Kia ora, Andrew. Per week, per year.
Well, the moving from 6.8 to 6.9 would just be very marginal. 5.8 to 7.5, looking about 1.7%, so that might be in your $60 a year, $1 a week sort of range, and a little bit, marginally less in the third year.
Kia ora, thank you.
Just while you're there, when you say marginally less, that's on top of an increase the year before, though, isn't it? So it's cumulative. So it isn't actually, it's not a saving, it's just less of an increase, that's all. Is that right?
It's a saving on the mayoral proposed increase.
What does it have any effect on the following 3.5% each year that there's no money coming in from the fund?
No, it shouldn't do. It should be pretty much the same. Continue the 3.5%.
Well, I thought the 3.5% was based on us getting 40 million a year back out of the fund.
Yes, yes. So the 3.5 do that, but this has higher increases in those earlier years. So you're raising our rates to cover that 40 million a year earlier on. So you've got a higher increase by year 3, so you're starting from a higher base, but then with no difference in movement from there on.
That's 3.5 is actually more money because it's 3.5 on top of an earlier starting thing. Okay, righto, so it's not good news. Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Dalton and then Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I was just trying to, I think I was trying to quantify what the Mayor was thinking, because I was thinking does this actually take into account the opportunity lost by not having the wealth fund and the transfer of shares? I mean, because what it's sounding, so what Councillor Foley's saying, it's just a difference of $1 a week.
On top of the mayor's rates.
Yeah, of course, on top of the mayor's rate rise. But it sort of doesn't add up for me in terms of the opportunity lost.
So the cumulative difference over the period, so rather than under the mayoral proposal, the cumulative rates increase is 21.9%. So if you're taking all 3 years, and under this proposal, it'll be 23.7%. So it's a 1.8% additional rates increase by that third year. So that's the cumulative impact, and then Andrew's spoken about what that means in terms of rates to a ratepayer.
So that's in terms of rates.
I was just going to add that that's only one part of the equation. Is what it can do for rates. As we discussed this morning, there's an amount retained in the fund that grows value over time as well. So you also miss out on that, and you also miss out on the benefits of having a diversified asset portfolio. That you can use as a war chest in times of disaster, for liquidity, all of those kind of things. You miss out on having all of the benefits. Rates bit is just one piece of it.
That was the bit I was after, and even though they are based on assumptions, they're the assumptions that we have always used for the airport share projections and other projections. Thank you.
Right, thanks for the questions. You want to say that's pretty clear? You ready to go for a vote?
Oh, I want to debate. That's okay.
Off you go, debate.
Kia ora. We're in debate now?
You're in debate.
Yes? All right. Okay. Okay, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Your Worship. Look, it should come as no surprise to anybody that I've put up an amendment like this. Obviously, throughout the workshops, I've asked certain questions, and I don't support the setting up of the future fund, especially if it means that the airport shares will be sold. And there's just a few reasons I'll go through. We've covered lots of it already today, but I was saving some points for this part of the meeting. So first off, we've talked about, and we've just heard now too, about the amazing things that this so-called fund, this future fund will offer us. But people seem to always forget also that this is not just a commercial or financial investment. The airport shares is more than that too. There are other benefits too, and Councillor Bartley very eloquently talked about those benefits of this strategic asset. It's more important than just what the money is that the airport brings in. It's about the border, it's about biosecurity, we've heard, it's about the jobs that it provides for people in my area, tens of thousands of people in my area. Parliament of the day when the airport was built recognised that and made sure, they tried to make sure, that at least half of the ownership of the airport was going to be in the hands, public hands, of Aucklanders, and spread that out over the 9 or 10 district councils of the day. We've heard also that it's not a strategic asset because now we only own 11% and we haven't exercised our ability to be strategic. But that's because we and our forefathers, those who've gone before us, the decision makers before us, I believe were derelict in that duty. We had a duty to Aucklanders to safeguard the strategic asset for the benefit of Aucklanders going forward for multiple generations, and people were derelict in that duty. I'm sure 20, 30, 40 years ago, sitting around a similar table like this, there were decision makers who on that day made prudent decisions in order to pay down debt, in order to do things for their communities of that day that they thought were worthwhile for their communities for that day, maybe even for 5 years or 10 years forward. But I'm sure they didn't look 30 years ahead, 40 years ahead to today, thinking about us today. Because if they had, like Councillor Watson said, we would have plenty of revenue. If they had 40 years ago thought about us, thought about their grandchildren, great-grandchildren going forward, thought about the dilemmas we might face 40 years ahead and made that intergenerational type of long-term decision, we would be sitting here today on a pot of gold. But we're not. Over time, we have whittled that away. We've been derelict in our duty. We went from 40%, 30%, 22% at the start of this super city, where we only had 2 district councils left who had kept their shares or increased their shareholding, just Auckland City and just Manukau City. Because of that good decision making, this super city has benefited from those shares. But today we are now here with only 11% of those shares left. And yes, we're still the biggest shareholder, but the second biggest shareholder is an Australian group. All right, so despite us saying that we didn't want foreigners to buy our shares or we didn't want it to go into foreign ownership, for all we know, those Australians did buy our shares, that 7% that we sold. Despite us saying that we wanted to put criteria in place to give mana whenua primacy during that sale, we saw, of course, that they pretty much had no shot of getting those shares. And so I'm just imploring you to think more about this as a strategic asset, not just about the profit that it makes, not just about the money or the commercial or financial benefit, but think 20 years ahead, not just 10 years ahead, 30 years ahead, 40 years ahead. How important is it for a city like ours to have some public ownership in our airport? This is a mega airport for a country this size. This is the most important entry and exit point to our city and to our country. So I'm trying to make a decision, not for today. Yes, we have issues. We've got issues for the whole 10 years going forward in this long-term plan. I'm trying to make a decision for 40 years' time, 50 years' time, for that generation. I'm also representing the people, of course, that I represent, the people of Manukau. We heard very clearly from the local boards in Manukau, from the local boards in Manurewa as well, in Henderson, Massey, the Whau, Waitakere Rangers, 11 local boards who said very clearly to us they did not support the sale of the airport shares. They did not support the last piece of public ownership going out and then the full privatisation of the airport. And by the way, we will be the first council, I believe, in this country who will fully privatise our airport. And it's such a shame. So I don't want my name to go down in history. I know we're going to lose, I'm probably going to lose this amendment. I know that based on the numbers. But I don't want my name to go down in history. I don't want my great-grandchildren, when they're looking at their history books at a school in Otara, to see their grandmother, Councillor Lutufuli, didn't make a stand for this last piece of public ownership of our airport shares. Secondly, Your Worship, and please indulge me, I want to talk about the Future Fund. Those protections, look, all the questions I was asking of our staff, it wasn't because I wanted to have an academic debate with them about our parliamentary processes and our constitutional arrangements. It's because I wanted you all to be very clear when you make the decision today that those protections are not guaranteed. There are no guarantees. There is no way to fully protect that fund. Even if Section 7, subsection 1C goes ahead, even if that bill passes exactly as it's written, any future parliament, if you get a governing body that has mates in Wellington, they can say, hey, we're not happy with that, and any future parliament can just amend that whole section. They can just repeal that entire act, actually, to enable a future governing body to raid that fund. So please be clear. Please don't be lulled into a false sense of security that this fund will be protected. But one thing is certain, once we sell those shares, that last 11% of public ownership, they'll be gone forever. Yes, you might have the money from it, but the public interest in that very important strategic asset, that will be gone forever. I doubt that we will ever be able to buy back any of those shares. We're not in a financial position now to buy back any of those shares. So that's what I'm putting up there. Now, I said, Your Worship, that I do think in terms of proverbs, because I am Samoan, I have metaphors running around in my head all the time. And I just want to leave you with one more before I talk about the 30 million. And that's that proverb about having a bird in the hand versus two in the bush. Right now, we've got this amazing bird in our hands. We've got this amazing strategic asset. But we're being asked to give it away for a couple of fancy-looking birds that are out there in the bush somewhere, out there in the ether, flying around. Now, I'm sure you are all very familiar with that proverb and what the underlying meaning is there. But to me, that's the decision I'm being asked to make. Do we keep the bird in our hand? It's been solid for 30, 40, 50 years. Or do we give it away for the possibility of those fancy golden eggs out there somewhere? You know, I said it in the previous meeting that this future fund is built on assumptions that are highly, highly uncertain. And I just want you to be clear when you make your decision today about that. Lastly, Your Worship, I did want to talk about that $30 million. Yes, it's being raised by debt, but as was confirmed by our staff today, our debt is around 14 billion. It's going to be 22 billion by the end of this long-term plan process. 30 million is a drop in the sea of debt that we have as a city. At the very least, what we can do to honour the Manukau City Council areas, the Auckland City Council areas, is to provide a little bit. 30 million is not much at all. And the effect it has on our rates is very minimal. And that's the part I'll leave you with. My amendment here has very little impact on the rates. Very little difference between the rates that you are proposing, and I commend you for keeping them as low as they are. My ones are still probably lower than any other rates being proposed around the country as well. Kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for that. Councillor Henderson, please.
Once again, it's gotten to me quicker than I was expecting. Should be more prepared. Today is a historic day, actually, and it's a day that I'm feeling quite upbeat about. I actually kind of respectfully disagree with a lot of the contributions, and I'll just explain this. We will look back on this decades to come. Now, visualise this, where our proceeds of this fund will grow and grow, and they'll be rolling in, and they will be spent on excellent public services and keeping people's costs down. And we'll keep growing that capital over and over and over. The future generations will get a better deal. That's actually quite rare in this climate change world, but it's fantastic. So many times, I think of things like the Rapid Rail. Council took the soft option. Well, we're not taking the soft option today. We're taking an innovative option, and I believe this is the financial equivalent of looking forward to the future, decades into the future. This is vision, but it's also security. It's also security for that capital. You know, we've talked about that before. I just wanted to sort of point out, because I forgot to mention this the first time, look, what's being proposed isn't an asset sale. It's not. It's a transfer from one asset to many assets and diversification. We need to make clear, unfortunately, in the view of many, including me, we are talking about a private company, right? I would love for us to have 51% plus of this. That'd be a very different conversation, and you'd hear something very different out of my mouth, but we don't. We're talking about a private company here. It's proposed that the fund will probably, right, we're assuming, sell airport shares to reinvest in other companies in a managed fund. Now, one of the first things we can say is that if the airport shares do provide us the best level of return, we can actually buy them, right? That's something we can do with, we can. I don't know why that's funny, actually. Yeah, I think it's quite disrespectful, but that's okay. Look, the other thing is, well, what's really important is we're talking about ethical investment principles, and some of our colleagues brought this up, right? Would the airport pass our ethical test today with the increases in the carbon emissions that they have done and are proposing? Look, I mean, if we are in control of it, and we're not, we don't have a seat at the table, but if we did, that's a very damning indictment of councillors, isn't it? That we've allowed that. Goodness me. You know, on the flip side to this is you get in a conflict of interest situation here. Well, if you're actually influencing the operations and arguing to diminish their bottom line, that affects the ratepayers' investment in this situation. That's hard. That's a conflict of interest. Look, I just need to be clear with people. We don't have a seat at the table. We don't have particular special interest in running this airport, apart from being the council, which is a regulatory body. Now, if we want to set up a subcommittee which actually wants input into how the airport is operating, they will have influence, and I would love that. I would love to be involved in that, because I've got huge issues with how they're operating, right? But we haven't done that. No one suggested that in the 65 workshops that we've had, that we actually have more of an influence on their work. So ultimately, look, the other thing is that we can't forget the public feedback here, right? And I don't want to be horrid, but there have been local boards that have passed their feedback without the workshop, and that's not good, right? Because that workshop answered a lot of the questions and concerns that I had. And look, nearly every local board area, the residents said that they wanted us to do this, including the Waitakere ward. And as I've always done my whole career, I've always followed what my ward have told me to do here. And I'm planning to do that again. So look, ultimately, councillors, just urge you to treat this as the investment it is and kick the tyres on it. Is it a sound investment? Does it meet the goals of the council? And I would argue maybe not, but let's get the experts in and we'll have a real look. Thank you, Mayor.
Well said. Councillor Ferry, please.
Thanks. I sort of shot my shot before on the issue of the substantive issue here, so I'm not going to go back into that. I guess I just wanted to speak because I feel really uncomfortable about how this is happening, that we had a debate on what was actually quite a different amendment with our Haukura friends in the room. And we are now having a debate on quite a different amendment and they are not able to participate. And I actually feel a bit ashamed of that. We've had a lot of conversations here. We had a very close vote on Māori wards. The Joint Governance Working Party, which I currently chair, we have a work program item where we're supposed to be reporting back to this governing body about how we can improve Māori representation and participation in our decision making. That was something that came off the back of the voting down of Māori wards. And now we have gone through deliberately a process that excludes Haukura reps from this conversation, and they're not even in the room, like they have actually left the building. And I feel quite ill about that, honestly. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Councillor Newman.
Councillor Foley, one of the reasons why the Australians invest in the airport is that they have this massive pool of savings through their retirement funds, and the reason why those funds have been built up is they are diversified. And that's the whole purpose of what we're trying to do, is get a diversified fund. I've never flown to a destination anywhere based on the ownership structure of the airport. I think that ultimately the airport is a commercial property precinct, and I'm not here to spend my time capitalising airport terminals and departure lounges and duty-free shops. I want to see this legacy fund grow because I want to turn drains into daylighted streams. I want to build new sports and community assets. The chair of the local board has been messaging me throughout the day, and we will plan with some confidence now things that we can do at Memorial Park if we pass this shortly, which I hope we do. Not your amendment, Councillor Foley, but I'm sure that we'll still break bread afterwards. So I think that the way forward, and I accept that there is a sentiment that is shared by a significant group of our constituents in both my ward and yours who don't favour the sale of the airport shares. That is absolutely the case. But it is also the case that this ownership group has actually done nothing to improve the performance of the airport, and it will do nothing to improve the performance of the airport with 11% of the shares. And I say that as somebody who has previously voted to borrow more money to buy more shares, which, as I said earlier, I don't think was a very successful strategy. So I thank you, Councillor Foley, but I actually think that, at least you're being very clear about this. You want to save those airport shares, but I actually don't see the reason why you'd want to do that. And I want to thank you for that clarity, but I think that the debate's been had and we should move on.
Councillor Filipaino.
Thank you, Chair. Interesting reading a Treasury report from 2009, and that relates to the airport shares. Interesting enough, in 2009, our stake was 22.7 with Auckland City Council. There were 2 applications to buy into the Auckland Airport, and this was a Treasury report for the Honourable Bill English. And so they made some changes, but the top 10 had 57.6% of the shares, which stopped not only Dubai, but the Canadian Pension Fund from having a stake in our airport. So that is a strategic airport. It's a strategic asset for us. But we chose to fritter away, and we only have 11%. Even in the long-term plan 2018-2028, we ended up, well, not we, but when we disestablished ACIL, what had happened was we ended up having 22.3% go in there, but we frittered it away. I'm trying to say this 11% that we have, we had the opportunity, we need to hold on to those. So I will be supporting, Councillor Fully, I will be supporting your part of number 2, because as I said in the Budget Committee, I support the Auckland Future Fund, but work needs to be done. And so it's going to be done. But like I said in the Budget Committee, I'd let it go, just like Frozen. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm just going to vote. I'm not for the disestablishment of the Regional Wealth Fund, because I said that in the Budget Committee, that I do support the Auckland Future Fund, and I'll hold to my word. But no way with the sale of the airport shares. I support that. I also support the $30 million. And like I said, 11% we have now, 1.2 billion. And as I said in the Budget Committee, the local board, both local boards said to me, it's a slap in the face. But the chair, the mayor, has undertaken with his indication of yes, that we'll work to see what happens with that. But that's the only one I'm not supporting, is the disestablishment of that. Kia ora. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher, who's online and hopefully will.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for allowing me to come home and take some cough medicine. I am at home, and as I speak to you, I'm looking at the Malcolm Evans cartoon of me, where I used my casting vote back in 1999 to save Legacy Auckland City Council's shares in the airport at that time. So to Councillor Fully, I say this is not because I'm just one of those people who philosophically just wants to flog things off. I am persuaded that we have something very special in terms of a legacy project that I will be proud to tell my grandchildren about in what is being proposed with the Auckland Future Fund. You can't guarantee anything 100%. You know, the Parliament could come in and disestablish Auckland Council and amalgamate us with somebody else, or de-amalgamate us at will. However, within all of the laws of probability, I see the Auckland Future Fund being put together with the safeguards that have been discussed at length today, and in supporting the Auckland Future Fund and in saying why I cannot support this amendment, I really want to acknowledge John Crawford. He was the former CEO of Auckland Council Investments Limited, which we rather foolishly voted to disestablish. He gave us time gratis. He came in, and he has given me the confidence that this is a much more secure investment in terms of safeguarding these funds for future generations. So I think the Mayor is to be commended for picking up the idea. I want to really thank Jazz Singh for a lot of the legal advice that he has given in terms of how the trust might work. Max Hardy has done some excellent work in drafting the legislation, and you've all been really open-minded about the way that we approach that. So I am persuaded that in terms of safeguarding this for subsequent generations, the Auckland Future Fund is a very much better. I don't know that the Mayor's going to have a cartoon to record it in 30 years' time from today, but I hope he does, because this is a legacy project that he can really hang his hat on and say, I thought about subsequent generations. The big issue for me now is getting the council officers to look at ways in which we can use the commercial area of the airport, using our regulatory tools. We've got huge opportunity here. And so I don't wish to be disrespectful to Councillor Foley. I've really enjoyed working with her, particularly on the audit committee, but I cannot support this today because I think she's mistaken in not choosing to serve and support the Auckland Future Fund, which I think will sort of outsurvive this council and be there for our children and our grandchildren into the future. So I hope that this is voted down. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a few more. Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it would be a mistake to think that Councillor Foley is out on her own there. I was looking at the feedback from the Albany Ward local boards, the Hibiscus and Bays, Upper Harbour local board, and both of them oppose quite strongly the divestment of the Auckland Airport International shareholding. So by no means is this just a passing whim of the South. Your cousins in the North feel equally strong about that, and not just local boards and councillors. I noticed that in the advice that we got given through the 120 hours, or to be honest, it seemed like a lot more than that, of workshops and whatnot that we had. There was advice from an economist who, in respect of the Auckland International Airport shares, said the strength of holding onto the shares is that the funds are directly invested into activities that benefit Auckland and Aucklanders. It is fitting that ratepayers' funds are used to support such activities. And conversely, diversifying away from the geographic risk by investing in entities outside of Auckland creates new challenges. This includes a slightly perverse situation in which Auckland ratepayer funds are being invested in activities that generate a return for Auckland Council, but which do not directly benefit Auckland or Aucklanders, at least not in the way the current investment does. Furthermore, it might be the case that the investments that are undertaken within the fund are contrary to Auckland's interests or create direct competition with Aucklanders' interests. For example, investments held through an investment vehicle, such as a tracking fund or a global investment fund, could be investing in airports, ports, or other economic activity that reduces the incentive to invest in Auckland. Now, I don't recall a lot of advice on that. I picked it up myself. I can't remember it exactly being to the fore in our 120 hours of hard labour in the workshops. I guess, too, Mr. Chair, there is a certain irony here today, because a few years back, 20th of June 2017, for instance, in a Finance and Performance Committee, when it was this very sort of fund that was being disposed of, the diversified assets portfolio, the advice given to us on that particular day, and I quote verbatim, the rationale for holding on to the diversified assets portfolio looks even weaker than the rationale for holding on to Auckland International Airport shares. Auckland Council could divest its interest in this fund and reinvest the proceeds in paying down debt, reducing rates or accelerating infrastructure investment to better achieve the Auckland vision. So when it suited the case, it was the opposite advice that was getting given just a few years ago, which a number of people around here willingly accepted. And now we seem to have a little bit of a reincarnation of some of the people who, back in those days, were voting to sell the very sort of fund that you're setting up, Mr. Mayor, which admittedly predates you, but it goes back to Councillor Foley's notion of history here. You're a new mayor. You've been given a lot of challenges to deal with. Some of us have been around quite a bit longer, and we know how this cycle goes when it comes to investments. We are, not to be too dismissive. It's like those little dogs in the back of the car with the heads bobbing up and down and agreeing with everything. We've done a complete 180 on the diversified assets portfolio, which I think is a good investment and had great returns before. Didn't stop at getting hocked off toot sweet. So all this vague, glib references to assurances and things are okay now, really? Look at the track record. It's quite a different picture it paints. So I thank Councillor Foley for a very moving speech that in days gone by might have pricked the conscience of those people on the left, or classified as left. Seems to be in a new political era now. That might be a good thing, who knows? But it's certainly a marked change. What I say, Mr. Mayor, and again, present company accepted, I say, look at the track record and see what's happened and make your judgments and your allowances on the basis of that, not vague, rather undetailed assurances. I can go for round two if you want, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'd quite like
I'm starting to get warmed up.
There's so many, I'm losing the track of my fiddling, my rather large thumb sticking in the wrong name. I've got Councillor Bartley now, thank you.
Thank you. Wow, it's a losing battle, but I got your back. I got your back. I'm going to go back to my 1934 reading that I did last night on the legal basis of municipal airports. And yes, thank you. I don't actually talk a lot around this table, so I'm going to take the opportunity. Justice Cardoza phrased it succinctly in Hess versus Rath, where he said that the city that is without the foresight to build the ports for the new traffic may soon be left behind in the race of competition. And I know we're talking about 11%, but it's still a stake in an airport. The need for the vision of the future and the governance of cities has not lessened with the years. The dwellers within the gates, even more than the stranger from afar, will pay the price of blindness. And I've been sitting here through all the debates thinking, who's being blind? Is it those of us who want to maintain a stake in the airport for the city, given its public purpose, the benefit we reap economically and socially as a city? Or is it those of us who want to see the future fund and what can be achieved from it for the city? So I don't know. I don't know who's being blind, but you know, it's even got me questioning, am I being progressive here, or am I being one of the councillors that is stopping the city from progressing? Because I never want to be that councillor that's always stopping things. But in this instance, I just can't move past the belief that it is important for a city to have a stake in the gateways to it, by air and by sea. And I know those of you agree regarding by sea because, you know, we've pushed back on the port lease, so it's just by air. So that's really what I've got. I just can't believe we're going to get rid of the airport shares, or we're enabling the airport shares to be gotten rid of, and other city councils are able to hold on to theirs. Anyway.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Lee.
I acknowledge Councillor Foley, I found her presentation quite moving actually, because she's spoken the plain truth, and it would be nice to hear a lot more of that in this particular place. The fact of the matter is, this is an asset that was bequeathed to us from visionary historic Aucklanders, and it is our duty to hand this asset on to future Aucklanders. It is the rightful legacy of Aucklanders to come, and by trading this in for a ephemeral, cashed up future fund. Some would call it a slush fund, instead of the diversified assets and strategic assets, nationally strategic assets, internationally strategic assets that the Auckland International Airport represents. 1,500 hectares of real estate, the biggest airport in the Southwest Pacific, shopping malls, diversified with shopping malls, car parks, hopefully jam-packed with electric cars one day, fuel, lubricants, oils, hotels, extremely undervalued because of decisions taken within this council, but that will come out of the woodwork. But in taking this decision on an asset that we inherited, we didn't have to pay for at all, built by earlier generations of Aucklanders who handed it on to us, and us to alienate that from future generations, I think, is sinful. I can't think of another word for it. So this is a sellout. We can tart it up in saying that our future fund will be a replacement. The future fund is cashed up. The future fund will be managed by the flash harries that we pay for from time to time, like can I mention Flagstaff, who got 1.4 million out of this already.
How much?
1.4 million out of this already for whatever. However, I believe we have a responsibility for future generations here. This is a vital, strategic, nationally important strategic asset, commercially diversified and based on solid land whenua, and we are selling it up for a mess of pottage. I completely support Councillor Foley's amendments, and I think I would ask around the room that people examine their consciences. Our colleagues are intelligent people. They must know in their hearts that Councillor Foley is telling us the plain truth. And we have to think of not just ourselves, we have to think of future generations. And I fully support her amendment.
Okay, thank you. We've had three in a row all saying the same thing, so I'll have someone who wants to oppose it. If there's anyone left who wants to do that, Councillor Williamson, are you going to?
Green? Yeah.
Mine's okay.
Somehow it's just going green.
Yours,
well, it's like me, it's going green. Mr. Mayor, I just think there has been quite a bit of conflating of various factors, and I want to just go through them. One of them is we're selling off the family silver to pay for the groceries. Well, we're not. And I would oppose just getting rid of shares and using it to just pay for consumption. That's wrong. What I don't oppose, though, is if we've got some assets, we try to get the best return out of them. Now, Councillor Foley talked about sort of proverbs. Well, there's some other adages that I think their parents would have told you at their knee, and that is never put all your eggs in one basket. And the worst thing you can ever have is all the money you've got invested in one asset. Because if anything goes wrong in that sector and it turns belly up, you've lost everything. But if you have a share portfolio that's got some energy shares and it's got some construction company shares and it's got some, I know we had it, and so people and they flogged it off, and they shouldn't have done that. I agree. I said they shouldn't have flogged it off. But I'd ask you first question is, what would you be thinking today if these were Air New Zealand shares? Would they be so special to you? Say the council had hereditary a big chunk of Air New Zealand shares, or Contact Energy shares, or other well-performing shares. Would they be that important to you? I don't understand the debate that's going on about this airport's very important to the city, because this airport will not change, no matter what our shareholding is in it. It will still invest to grow. It will still have new planes coming in. It will still have an operation into the Pacific where people feel they've got an attachment. Our ownership of shares makes no difference to that. So I want to give you a quick analogy of the families that are out there right now, lots of them. Family with kids, struggling like stink to put food on the table, to pay for fuel for the car, to pay for their operation. And they suddenly open a drawer and find they've got some shares. Are they going to turn around and say, well, we're just going to hold on to these because these are important? Or are we going to try and get them to get us a really good return, a lot better than we're currently getting from that airport, and then actually help ourselves with some revenue to pay for the things the family wants? So I'd ask you to think very carefully about it. Some people seem wedded to this simply because they were an airport. And I can't understand that. I'm only wedded to things that in a diversified portfolio over a number of various operations, we can try to maximise the return we get for the shareholders of this, that is the ratepayers of Auckland, and we try to maximise the sums of money we make available to pay for the good things that you are all wanting all the time. And it will make no difference to Auckland Airport. The idea that somehow we'll sell it to foreigners and the airport will be gone, well, that's restricted anyway. There are real strict rules about foreign ownership of Auckland Airport, so that doesn't come into it. And I promise you today that if this council was to be finally rid of those shares in 10 years or whenever it happens, and we've diversified into a whole lot of other investments, Auckland Airport will still be chugging along and people will be flying in and out and so on. But if this council picks a share portfolios properly, and if you talk to managed funds people, they can return phenomenal returns compared to what we're getting out of that one block of shares. I think we'd be doing ratepayers a real disservice not to try to get that benefit back. I think we'd be doing them a huge disservice not to. And so this is not some sort of ideological sell off the family silver and spend the money on consumption. I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong. I don't want to sell off the fund. I want to grow the fund and have it as a production house generating income streams for that we can spend money on the nice to haves that a lot of you are keen on. Not that I am, but you are. But please don't conflate it with, oh, this means the airport will suffer. Some of the new people that buy shares in them may be way better owners of those shares in terms of what they do and their participation in the company than we are. We're pretty damn useless owner of shares. We sit here dead and quiet and doing nothing and then say it's important we're there. So I just think if we break out those individual components and don't conflate them all, you can see we could get a fantastic outcome for the people that I think you care about, because I do too, is the ratepayers of the city.
Okay, I've got three more. Leone, Walker and Turney. I'm kind of, what's worrying me is that the other amendment is not much different. Please, can we, when we do that, do we have to roll out the same emotional stuff again and again until we all die of old age? Councillor Leone, please. No, can we have some fresh reasons for this? Nothing I haven't heard. Yeah, it was quite fresh in 1935, I'll give you that. Councillor Leone, then Councillor Walker, then Councillor Turney, then we have to do it all over again. We'll have to do it all over again. And we can stay here till 10 o'clock tonight, and I'm going to keep you here till 10 o'clock tonight if you want to do that. But please, Councillor Leone.
Look, I will keep mine brief and, 100% total call this going up, Councillor Foley, and as Councillor Bartley has said, I've also got your back. And the reason why I do have your back is, again, for the similar reasons that you've raised around my tamariki and knowing that we talk about the fact that we have, we don't want to put all our eggs into one basket. But from my perspective, this is our only egg that we have left, our only significant egg that we have in terms of ownership for Auckland Council. Once this is gone, and I know that we're talking about protection and we're going to put all these things in place so that it's not sold, but unfortunately I have to go with the views around the track record that we have. And it's, you know, when we look back at that just recent sale we had last year and the debt going up, and we know that again, in 2017, that money has been sold. But in addition to that, this significant decision we're making is basically, you know, we're looking at other councils around the city. They're increasing their rates by up to 23%. What we're looking at here is a very minimal rates increase, and if we only need to increase it by 1 or 1.5% to keep one of our most significant assets, then I'm all about doing that. You know, we think about the people at the moment that have had to go into their KiwiSaver to keep their assets in terms of their homes. Now, they could easily just sell those homes, but once that home's gone, it's gone for life. Millions of dollars. People have had to dip into their KiwiSavers, millions of dollars to be able to maintain their homes. And yes, this is a strategic asset, but it's the same thing. At the end of the day, once they're gone, they're gone. And, you know, I hope that we are going to have these protections in place. And when we're sitting around this table this time next year, I really do hope that we're going to sit here and say, oh, here's all this extra money that we've made from this strategic asset going into the future fund. But at this point, and based on the decisions that I've made to date, I don't trust those processes. I really don't trust those processes. So that's why I am supporting this today, and I'm thinking about my mokopuna in the future. And I'm thinking about the way that Māori actually look at long-term plans, because they look at 50-year plans. Most iwi actually look at 50-year plans. And we know that at the moment, interest rates are really high for homes. People are having to go into their KiwiSavers or sell their second car or whatever. For us, because we've got a bit of debt, we're selling one of our biggest assets. And that's just, to me, you know, if I'm looking at my household and I'm looking at my current way that I'm managing things, I would do everything that I could to keep it, knowing that my children will have that home in the future, or they'll have those things that they can bank on. It's just very concerning to me when I look at it in that way, that if I was to sell my house, the one thing that I knew that I could have, and my kids won't have that, and that's what our kids are not going to have. I really do hope, though, in that 1 year that we have this discussion, that we're going to say, look, we have got this future fund that's doing amazingly well. So I'm looking forward to that conversation, but I want to say I'm really, really concerned, and that's why I support what you've put forward today, Councillor Fully. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. I hope next year that it has done well, and you'll probably claim that you're part of it. Councillor Walker.
Sure, I've got a vexed situation. I actually support the establishment of a regional wealth fund, but I'm at odds with the issue around the airport shares. So I'm going to speak to this because the Auckland airport is an engine of Auckland. And if we're actually assessing something on the long term, doing a foresighting exercise and backcasting, the airport's going to be around. There'll be electric planes in the air. There are other things that are coming on. There'll be more people visiting New Zealand, and this council is in the business of Auckland and what's good for Auckland. The port is a vital part of that, and so is the airport, and all of the other things that we do around enhancing tourism, enhancing businesses, enhancing jobs, and the like. And from my perspective, a stake in the airport will, over time, do very well. And I think if we look at the track record of the airport, we can actually see that. The proof is in the growth and the income that we've received from the airport over time. So I'll certainly be voting to support the amendment there. We can always revisit the regional wealth fund at some point. That issue's not lost. But if the shares in the airport are gone, I think other people are right. We won't get a chance of getting them back. And I think from the perspective of council, and this council exists in perpetual succession, look back over time, I think the astute move is to retain that interest.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Turner, please. Councillor Walker. Humble apologies. Been a long day. It's like my thumb, I pressed the wrong button before, but we got you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have the ability to look back over a council life. I can look back over my own life, and I've got myself in a few financial holes over that time. And you have to make unpalatable decisions and offer up what you love the most to stop yourself falling. The measure of a person is how you dig your way out. So if we want to give respect to these airport shares, it's how hard we work and dedicate ourselves going forward to continual savings and putting money back in that account. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got to the end of this now. I'm going to put the vote. Okay, and does anyone want to call it a contest? One of your wretched things? Okay. We'll have one of these. I'm going to ask Sandra with an R this time. Or you are either for or against the amendment. It's a bit annoying because we're going to get back to the same thing that we were about an hour ago, but there you go. This time without Maoris, seeing as you didn't like them, but we will going to do it without Maoris, okay? Although there is a Maori left who's not going to respect the other Maoris who were there before, but off we go.
Okay, councillors, you are voting on the amendment moved by Councillor Foley, seconded by Councillor Leone. Councillor Baker.
Against.
Councillor Bartley.
For.
Councillor Dalton.
Against.
Councillor Darby.
Against.
Councillor Ferry.
Against.
Councillor Filipaina.
For the lot.
Councillor Fletcher.
Against.
Councillor Foley.
For, very much for.
Councillor Henderson.
Against.
Councillor Hills.
No, thank you.
Councillor Lee.
For.
Councillor Leone. For. Councillor Newman.
Against.
Councillor Sayers.
Against.
Deputy Mayor Simpson. Councillor Stewart.
Against.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
For.
Councillor Watson.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Against.
Mayor Brown.
Against. Walker said against.
14-7. That's lost 14 votes to 7.
Okay, we have one from Councillor Lee. Is it seconded?
Yes, I believe so. I believe it's been seconded.
Seconded, please.
By, Watson. Righto, this one here is basically kick it down the road.
Chair, is that the amendment that you and the Deputy Mayor are seconding? Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'm going to go straight to Mike to talk to this. I don't think we need any questions. So talk to your amendment, please, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The argument has been pretty well rehearsed, so I'm not going to take up too much time. We have to learn, I think, members, from our own recent past in regard to the diversified fund assets which we inherited from the Auckland Regional Council group and we kept that, and it was very well managed by an expert in the chair of Auckland Council Investments Limited, Simon Allen, who's still very much involved in that sort of work, particularly in future funds, and he had some very interesting advice to give me recently about the viability of otherwise of equity funds. However, against his advice, it was taken over by the council, and then it was cashed up and spent, and nothing was left. So that's our record is not particularly encouraging, and therefore, in terms of ensuring that that money is not cashed up pretty quickly, as the diversified fund assets were, we need some protection from ourselves, because the only people who can make those decisions are ourselves, and given our record, it doesn't provide a great deal of surety to the people of Auckland, unfortunately. These are assets that we've inherited going back generations to our tupuna in Auckland, and they wisely created these assets with their hard labour and their vision and their foresight and their prudent management over all those decades, and now it comes down to us in a kind of a redux of Rogernomics to start selling those assets, which is quite tragic, because we know full well where that approach ends. We know full well there's no point in kidding ourselves that a cashed up asset fund is going to last for very long around this place, unless there is a fundamental change, and of course that's very hard to achieve. And so therefore, if this is to go ahead, I think the people of Auckland need some protection and we need some protection from ourselves, if you will, to ensure that this huge amount of cash in stocks and bonds, which I find very, very interesting, because it wasn't so long ago that we had advice and from some very familiar names about the inadvisability and the essential insecurity in investing in stocks and bonds in a volatile world market. And that was back in 5, 6, 7 years ago, when before there was a war in Eastern Europe, before there was a war in the Middle East, and before there was a serious falling out in terms of international relations between the People's Republic of China and the United States of America and its allies. That was a different world altogether, and yet we were advised investing in stocks and bonds is not reliable, not a sure bet, and so that was a pretext for cashing it up and spending it real quick. And I would say that the fate of this cashed up fund, if those decisions are going to go ahead, and it looks like they will, sadly enough, despite the wonderful arguments put up by Councillor Foley, it didn't melt anyone's heart. I'm very sad to say, and very disappointed to say, didn't appeal to their intelligence, which it should have done, and didn't appeal to their sentiment, which it should have done as well, because what we are doing is disinheriting future generations of Aucklanders from this remarkable strategic asset, the main airport in the Southwest Pacific, with 1,500 hectares of Auckland land seriously undervalued for whatever reasons. That'll come out in the wash eventually, with a whole range of diversified income earning assets, and we're cashing that up for some. We haven't even seen what the alternative is. And so all I'm asking is that we go to our Parliament and ask our Parliament to protect us from ourselves, and more importantly than protecting us, protecting Aucklanders and future generations from being disinherited from their rightful legacy because of the whims of a generation that sits around this table. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, sorry, can I ask finance staff to come up, because I'm struggling with the financial marriage of A and Roman numeral 2D to go together. I don't get that, sorry. So that's my first question. I've got two questions.
Yeah, by all means, thank you.
So,
Michael, do the numbers in this amendment match staff advice, because I'm struggling.
I think the
with
Chief Financial Officer wants to answer some of the questions.
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. So the resolution, the proposed one to B, which makes establishing the fund subject to passing legislation, means that the time frame of establishing the fund becomes quite uncertain, and we could not be confident that the legislation would pass and the fund could be set up within the 6-month time frame, and that is the assumption on which those rates calculations are based.
Thank you for that, and Your Worship. And the second one, I just want to question, does 2B mean that actually Parliament decides whether we should sell the shares, not us?
I think basically, I'm not absolutely sure myself, but I think everything I've been trying to do is get Wellington out of running the council. We're asking them to make the decision, which seems at face value completely wrong. I know there are a lot of MPs on both sides who would like to put the legislation through, but making it subject to that means that we are once again stepping aside from our own decisions in the city. So I'm not at all happy about that. Councillor Ferry.
Thanks. I just wanted to understand the timing here and whether this is in addition to the local bill or whether the local bill achieves this. So I'm sorry, I don't know who that question is to, but does the local bill that has already been drafted and circulated and I think is on our agenda, does that meet safeguards against partial or complete liquidation? Like, what would be the process by which we would assess that Parliament has passed legislation that we're fine with? Is the implication that it is the local bill?
I would think that would be a question for the mover, but our interpretation would be that that would be passage of the local bill as appended to the agenda.
Okay, so sorry, I don't know if the mover wants to make. I don't know if. How do you want to do that? Okay.
Can I say it's totally appropriate for Parliament and the government to be involved in this decision. To save us from ourselves, given our track record with cashed up or even stocks and bonds investments is actually extremely unpromising. So this is of national importance, and if this investment is to be taken away from the reality of an international airport and all the other assets on that 1,500 hectare estate, then there needs to be some protection on past track record. It's kind of remarkable that when we had the diversified asset fund, that officer advice was, oh no, we should get rid of it. And now here is a solid asset and actually an income earning diversified asset based on land, based on whenua, and now the advice is, oh, you need to put it into stocks and bonds. Well, sorry, that's not consistent, and the world is far less a secure place than it was 10 years ago. So that's my response. We need Parliament to give some security to the people of Auckland, because on our track record, we cannot.
Thank you for that, and you've already had a chat on it as well. Councillor Dalton, and then I think we'll put the thing. Please note that the substantive original mayoral proposal has a lot of protections in it. But Councillor Dalton.
Yeah, I was actually quite supportive of this before the speaker spoke, because I thought, and my question was going to be around timing, because I did make the assumption that the legislation was the bill that, you know, we're going to be putting forward anyway. So my question was going to be, does this slow it down? Is this just another safeguard? And even the bit about partial or complete liquidation, I was comfortable with, but now I'm not quite sure what it's trying to achieve. It sounds like, and more involvement from Wellington. Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you can answer my question. We've all got the same question, I think.
I think that question was answered by the CFO. I think waiting for legislation to be passed could put at risk us achieving those rates levels, and could put at risk our ability to convince auditors that we could achieve those rates levels.
Councillor Watson and Councillor Furley, and then I'm going to put it.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I think the first thing to realise here is that we've moved on. Okay, we lost the previous vote. Unfortunately, this is going now to the next best thing that I've heard numbers of people allude to, and that's protection. People around here have said they want the best protection. This is what this amendment seeks to do. In fact, Mr. Mayor, if I go to your mayoral proposal, which is very well written, by the way, whoever put this together, it's eminently readable, and the particular section that I'm going to is the stricter protections enshrined in a trust deed and legislation 98 and 99. However, I want us to seek the added protection of legislation over the top of that, and there's a copy of the draft local bill. The legislation and trust deed can establish the following principles. Well, if we're really going to be true to our word of this is somehow different than the last decade, that, you know, you're dealing with a different council now and we mean what we say, then that legislation is that protection, and you've already alluded to it. So all this amendment does is seek to tie that down. Is that not reasonable? Or do we not really mean, I'm not referring to you, Mr. Mayor, I'm talking to the council body as a whole. Either you are looking to have the best protection, or you're just going on a wing and a prayer yet again. Councillor Lee, and I think that has added significance here. I was just looking at what they said about Auckland Council investments, because there's an eerie similarity to what's being proposed here. This is when they were established. ACIL is being established to bring a strong commercial focus to the ownership and governance of Auckland's major investment assets and provide an efficient structure for ownerships of the assets. The establishment of ACIL will consolidate existing equity investments and will achieve a consistent approach to investment portfolio management across Auckland Council. ACIL will, no doubt, will own and manage assets transferred from existing councils. Within a couple of years of that, they were gone, and so were the assets. So, to me, the ultimate protection we're looking for is through legislation, and as it stands, we have a statement of intent, but we have no guarantee that that's followed through in the way that it's been depicted verbally. And I say that because, in my view, the more successful this fund is, the more in danger it actually becomes. The better you do, the more a target it becomes. And again, that's not fanciful, because if you look at the diversified assets portfolio, that was stood at $335 million in 2016, which was a lot of money back then. That investment portfolio would regularly return ratepayers on average around 10% per annum. 10%, that's more than 7.5%. 10%, in good years it was 18%. Then councillors were told it was being sold in order to manage the debt ratios within prudent limits. The following year it was a different reason. It was to support public transport and stormwater infrastructure. The reason it became attractive was the fact that it was successful. We're hoping this is going to be successful. I don't see anything in this amendment that goes to the protection of legislation being ensured that is contrary to anything that we have been told about. Other than it's just back to business as normal, where you, and by I mean the royal you, that's all of us, do not fulfil our obligations to actually nail this down. This is the opportunity to do it. Are you going to do it?
Thank you. Councillor Fully.
Kia ora, thank you, Your Worship. And I did actually have a question for staff, so you might have to come back. I'm sorry about that.
Last one was a commentary.
No, this is a question, I promise.
Okay, right. We've got a bit mixed up here, but we'll note that some people have had their commentary before they've had the questions.
Yeah.
But we'll mark down the commentaries, and thank you.
So my question is around the timing of the formation of the fund, and I think I did ask a type of question along these lines in the workshop. So regardless of because we don't know how long it'll take and things like that. So the future fund, though, the mechanism for setting it up and the work to set it up will start after today, and then it'll be set up regardless whether or not the bill gets passed. Is that correct? And what sort of a time frame then are we looking at in terms of setting up the fund?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll take that question. So we could progress with setting up the advice around the governance structure and the policies of the fund, but we could not progress with setting up the trust itself. We could prepare it, but we wouldn't be able to progress further than that because this amendment would require the legislation to be in place first.
Okay, kia ora. All right, I think, yeah, thank you. Thanks, guys. Sorry, I didn't need you after all. Kia ora.
Councillor Ferry, please, and then Councillor.
Just to note, this is a comment, not a question. So if you wanted to finish questions.
Good on you. Well done. Behave. I think we're biffing. Have you got a question or a comment? Question or comment?
Just a question.
Okay, good.
So essentially this, could you just repeat again, this would not allow us to have a balanced budget, would it? Audit and June will not allow us, this is too uncertain, the timing of, and we would likely lose that 20 million that we've already said, that we've, essentially everything we've voted on, I think 3 times now, would now not be able to be brought forward to audit because we don't have certainty.
So under this amendment, our auditors would ask us the question, how certain are we and what evidence do we have that this could happen, legislation will be passed within the time frame that's been talked about. So I think we would struggle to provide that evidence around the time frame. So we would have to base the financial predictions would have to be based off the best available evidence.
And the 20 million of enhanced returns from the Auckland Fund, that is only because we could set it up 6 months earlier. If we decline to set it up 6 months earlier, we're essentially saying in the first year of its operation, another 1% rates rise based on this decision, because that would have to come from the second year of returns, or it would come for the second year of the LTP instead of this first year.
Yes, so that the rates benefit would be delayed in terms of the enhanced return from the fund, and the achievement of that 20 million is part of that, and that would be delayed as well. Right.
Okay, so there'd be a delay in the rates, so a need for more rates, but also D is a promise, which should be, I guess, B? I don't know. But anyway, that in the first year, that means we would have to raise another 1% rates next year to allow that promise.
We would have to set the budget on the best assumptions around what is feasible within the time frame, in a way that satisfied our auditors. If you took the view that things might take 12 months to get there, then you're kind of back to the amendment that was discussed earlier today with a sort of 12 months delay, for example. But we would have to think about how do we, how can we justify the assumptions and what evidence do we have to support it, and have to talk to our auditors. So as written, with those rates increases and financial impacts and this requirement, we would sort of struggle to implement that to the satisfaction of our auditors.
Okay, it's just my one sentence comment. I think, although this makes sense, this is what we want and what we have already decided 3 times today, but this amendment makes it so uncertain and the ups and downs so uncertain that we won't be able to pass a budget.
Pretty much. Okay, we're in comments. Some of them we've been in comments. Unfortunately, I didn't discipline this enough. Councillor Ferry has stated she has a comment. Well behaved.
Don't know if that's a plus or a minus, sir. A plus, okay, thanks, Desley. I just wanted to reiterate again my disappointment that we are having this debate on, again, another very different amendment from the one we debated with Haukura in the room and able to participate. And I find that, really disappointing and against the values of inclusion, particularly of tangata whenua, that a lot of people in this room say that they support. I will be interested in the responses from Haukura when they find out we've done this, because I think they left the building thinking we weren't going to. And in particular noting that they have their treaty audit work coming up and coming back to us a little bit later in the year. So I'll be curious to see how they approach this in light of that. Thank you.
I'll take over that. Councillor Foley, who doesn't.
Just a short comment, Your Worship. I guess for me, it is about the protection, because we've heard so much that strong argument that, it's so well protected, this future fund, that we don't have to worry, and all of the worries and concerns that I have are not true. So I think that this amendment, I understand, is really about that, and I do wish, I think, that maybe if the speakers were able to elaborate in a different way, maybe others would understand that better. But for me, that's what this ultimately is about. Now, I am concerned, because I did ask the question in the workshop, that the future fund would be set up with or without that protection being there. And we've sort of heard that now, that whether or not the bill goes ahead, because there's no guarantee the bill will go ahead in its current form and be passed as law. That's an uncertainty. But whether or not it does, whether or not that protection is there, this fund is going to be set up. That's sort of why I asked that question. Also, we were told in the workshops that this bill would very quickly pass. So I don't know, because we asked the questions about the timeline, and we were sort of told, yes, you've had discussions with the current coalition government. Everybody's happy with it, even with Section 7(1)(c), and it will go through very quickly. And then just last comment, because, I take what Councillor Ferry has said, and I accept that and understand that, but lots of people around this table have said that they support certain things. Many people even campaigned on certain things, and then, of course, they've changed their minds and changed their tune when we get to this table. So I just want to say that. Kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Henderson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, I'll be brief, and I sort of mean no disrespect with the comments, but I just want to tautoko the comments of Councillor Ferry wholeheartedly. Look, it's not clear to me why the IMSB haven't been included in this discussion. It's really not. It was a choice to do so, and I just wanted to register that I'm really disappointed in that choice. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Okay, we've got to the end of this. We're going to do this by deliberation again. Oh, defending Ocean, what it is. Copulation. Pardon? I'm going to ask Councillor Sandra to ask. Oh dear. It's a long day.
Wow.
About this time yesterday, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade introduced His Excellency Wayne Brown, which to a room full of hilarity. I failed the excellency level by several shots, unfortunately. Nevertheless, Sandra, who's an excellent supporter and advisor to me, will lead the taking of this. We're going to do this on the basis of accepting or rejecting the amendment, and in the event that it may be accepted or rejected, we will go to the substantive original one, which did actually say that we would seek legislative protection of what we're doing, as opposed to this one will be asking Wellington to decide what we're doing. That's my problem with it. Okay? So those of you who want to be the Auckland Council seeking support will oppose this, and those that want to be the Wellington Council telling us what to do will support this amendment. Please carry out the vote.
Councillors, you're voting on the amendment by Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor Watson. Councillor Baker.
Against.
Councillor Bartley.
Against.
Councillor Dalton.
Against.
Councillor Darby.
Against.
Councillor Ferry.
Against.
Councillor Filipina.
For.
Councillor Fletcher.
No.
Councillor Foley.
For.
Councillor Henderson.
Nah.
Councillor Hills.
No, thank you.
Councillor Lee. Aye. Councillor Leone.
For.
Councillor Newman.
Against.
Councillor Sayers.
Against.
Deputy Mayor Simpson. Councillor Stewart.
Against.
Councillor Turner.
For.
Councillor Walker.
For.
Councillor Watson.
Hat trick for.
Councillor Williamson.
No, not for me.
Mayor Brown.
No.
So that's lost 7 to 14.
Right. Can I now
Go
go
back
to
to the original. Yes.
Okay. I'm now going to put the Mayor's budget, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. And we've had enough comment and debate, so I'm just going to put the damn thing. Okay. Do you want one of your things again, or do you want...
Yes, the Deputy Mayor has requested a division.
Deputy Mayor has requested a division in this. Okay.
Just a short comment, Mr. Mayor. I just want to acknowledge my colleague to the left who has called me the biggest loser, because I only got 6 votes with my recommendation in the Budget Committee, and the other 2 got 7. So I wear that banner with pride. But, Your Worship, this whole process for me has been like a freaking yo-yo. And that's a yo-yo because it's my fault. It's not yours, so don't worry, Mr. Mayor. It's a yo-yo because the establishment, the not establishment, the establishment, I agreed with the AFF. Then we had the colleagues say what they needed to say, and as a result, I voted against the establishment, and then in this last part voted for. So this whole process has been a learning curve again for me in regards to making sure that I listen to my colleagues around this table. So to the colleagues that have participated in this, I say thank you, because you made me think in regards to this whole mayoral proposal and this long-term plan. So I just needed to acknowledge that because it has been hard, but we've got through it. And I just wanted to acknowledge the colleagues around this table, around their input. So that's all I wanted to say. And again, staff, humble apologies for you all being here. But I look forward to the Mayor shouting you fellas wine. Kia ora.
Do you want me to say something?
You're welcome to say something.
Oh, well, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody, actually. It has been a long a long ride to get to this point. And as I mentioned in the last meeting, I think the very fact that we started in one place and ended in another place, you can't please all the people all the time, but if you please some of the people most of the time, then you probably got it right. So, Your Worship, well done. To everybody, thank you. To the staff, thank you. Long ride getting to this point, especially our finance staff. Your Worship, I think your own office deserves a bit of a round of applause. They've done exemplary work behind the scenes. So I look forward to the final vote after a very, very long day, and I hope Mrs Brown's not too upset with all of us, because I know that she wanted you home. So let's go by division and get the voted on. Thank you.
Sandra, please put we are voting for the mayoral proposal.
Councillor Baker.
For.
Councillor Bartley.
For, but noting my vote against 2A, please. Is it, or is it A? Two little eyes. It's a long day.
Councillor Dalton.
For.
Councillor Darby.
For, note the email that I've sent.
Councillor Ferry.
For.
Councillor Filippona.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
Yes.
Councillor Foley.
For, but I'll also note my strong vote against A2. Kia ora.
Councillor Henderson.
Yes.
Councillor Hills.
Yes, thank you. Good night.
Councillor Lee.
No.
Councillor Leone.
Yes, but vote against A2.
Councillor Newman.
For.
Councillor Sayers.
For.
Deputy Mayor Simpson.
For.
Councillor Stewart.
For.
Councillor Turner.
For.
Councillor Walker.
For, but with reservations as per the budget vote.
Councillor Watson.
For.
Councillor Williamson.
Yeah.
Mayor Brown.
Yes, please.
That's carried 20 votes to 1.
Hang on.
Just hang in there for a minute. We're almost there.
I'll move.
Target rate.
I'll second.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded with regard to the Franklin Local Board Paths targeted rate.
Other rates and fees.
Oh no, sorry. Other rates and fees, my humble apologies.
Yep.
All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary. Carried. Councillor Baker would like to move the Franklin Local Board Paths, and I'd like to second that because I rather like it. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary. Carried. There's no extraordinary business. I would like to thank everybody and say we've now completed this meeting, which actually started last year. The other day...
I have more from 1934.
We didn't hear it all.
I'll save it for next one.
Okay, so I'd like to thank you all for the last 126 hours. And I remember last night, while I was being addressed as Excellency, somebody said, doesn't time go fast as you get older? And I said, not every day. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I look forward to doing this again in another 3 years' time.